Let's begin with Act 3, Scene 1. So we have completed Act 2 in the previous class. So let's begin with Act 3, Scene 1. So here, Banquo enters. He's in a room in the palace and he awaits Macbeth's permission to leave. This scene is very important because it shows it's a soliloquy, and here Banquo says, "Thou hast it now, King Cawdor Glamis all, as the weird women promised, and I fear thou playedest most foully for it." So notice that he uses the vocabulary of the witches: fair is foul, foul is fair. The idea is constantly evoked in the play, so it is not a mere coincidence that he uses the same word, foul. So he is also thinking about the prophecy. He says, "Thou hast it now." He's wondering that maybe you played foul for it. I'm afraid that you played foul to become the king of Scotland. So remember that apart from Macbeth, who else saw the witches? It was Banquo. He was also present there, and he also witnessed the prophecy of the three witches. So he says, "As the weird women promised, and I fear thou playedst most foully for it. Yet it was said." So he's not concerned about Macbeth playing foul to become the king of Scotland. Rather, his chief concern is that yet it was said, "It should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings." So, okay, you have become the king of Scotland. You have played foul for it. But my concern is, yet it was said that I would become the father of kings. So, my sons would become the king of Scotland. And since the prophecy has turned out true, you became the Thane of Cawdor, then you became the king. Maybe my sons are also going to become the kings. So that's why he's thinking about the prophecy. But what's the difference between Macbeth and Banquo? He says, "May they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope, but hush no more." The last line of his speech, he says, "But hush no more." He shoos away the thought. And this is what sets him apart from Macbeth. He he holds a higher moral ground. Remember in Act 2, Scene 1, he says, "Restrain in me the cursed thoughts that nature gives way in repose." So Banquo is someone who has self-control. He has restraint, the quality of restraint. He has control over himself, unlike Macbeth. So he does not commit the crime. He is also ambitious. He is also thinking about becoming the father of kings. But at the same time, he says, "But hush no more." So he shoos away the evil thoughts, and he chooses to stay on the path of morality. Then Macbeth enters as the king along with his wife, Lady Macbeth, and they call Banquo their chief guest. Then skip a few lines, go to line number 29. Macbeth says, "We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide." So parricide is the killing of father. It's a crime of killing your father. And he calls Donalbain and Malcolm bloody cousins because now the blame has shifted to the two sons of Duncan because they fled to Ireland and England respectively. Then after Banquo leaves and the servant, so now Macbeth is left alone on stage. He says that "Bring them before us. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus, our fears in Banquo stick deep." So Macbeth here knows that Banquo too, he knows Banquo too well. Plus, he knows that he witnessed the scene when the witches hailed Macbeth the king. So he knows the qualities of Banquo, that he's witty, he's brave, and he says that Mark Antony's was by Caesar. So you are like Antony. Macbeth is like Antony, and Banquo is like Caesar. And Banquo is the only person except for Macbeth who knows and who has met the three witches. So Macbeth is planning another murder. He wants to get clean out of the earlier one. So he's afraid that Banquo knows everything, and he plans to murder him too, even though he's his best friend. Then he says he chid the sisters, chid as in chide, scolded the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me and bade them speak to him. Then prophet like they hailed him father to a line of kings. So upon my head they placed a fruitless crown. Fruitless crown, barren, remember barrenness in terms of progeny, no seed of generation for Macbeth, and the theme of one of the central themes of the play is the law of primogeniture. So the witches have drained him dry as hay, as they said in Act 1, Scene 3. And so he needs to clear Banquo and Flynns from his path. So he says, for Banquo's issue, have I filed my brain? As in, have I polluted my brain for Banquo, for his son to become the king? For them, the gracious Duncan, have I murdered? So he's repenting. He's questioning whether I should have murdered Duncan, because I won't. My sons won't become the king. His crown is a fruitless one. It's barren. And Banco is like that guy who had the option to cheat in the exam but who did not. So his friend did, and he chooses to remain guilt free. His conscience, he has a guilt free conscience. I borrowed this example from Tim McGee's lecture, so please watch his video. He explains the play very well. And Banquo is, some people believe that Macbeth is a play about Banquo, not Macbeth. So the qualities of Banquo and as opposed to Macbeth. So in what terms the two are different? Both of them were soldiers. They were brave. They had options, but Banquo chose the path of morality, whereas Macbeth, after getting manipulated by the witches and by his wife, he becomes a tyrant. He kills one person after the other. First, he kills Duncan, then, he kills the two grooms, and then he's planning to kill Banquo and his son. And remember, Banquo is one of his closest friends. And now he has reached that level of cruelty that he's planning to kill his own best friend. Then go to line number 84, where Macbeth says, say, thus did Banquo. So he calls two murderers. Here he is planning to kill Banquo, but since he has become a king, now Macbeth is exploiting his political power, newly acquired political power as a king, and he hires a murderer to get rid of Banquo and his son. And at the same time, he tricks them into believing that Banquo oppressed them in the past. So now, because he's a king, he cannot go ahead to murder people, but he can exploit his power. He can hire people to kill others. So he brainwashes he brainwashes two murderers into believing that Banquo has oppressed them in terms of money and resources, and that they should kill him. Then Macbeth says, this line is interesting, the speech is interesting, line number 94, where Macbeth says, I, in the catalogue, yea, go for men. So when the first murderer says that we are men, Macbeth says, yes, you're men, but as hounds and greyhounds, mongrels, spaniels, curs, shogs, water rugs, and demi-wolves are clapped all by the names of God, the name of dogs. So here he names a number of dogs, breeds of dogs, lap dogs, rough-hailed water dogs, and demi-wolves are cross between dog and wolf. So he names dogs and different qualities of those dogs and draws a parallel between men and dogs. So he says, the value, he talks about the value of dogs, and he says, and so for men. In line number 102, he says, and so for men. Now, if you have a station in the file, not in the worst rank of the manhood. So he compares different species of dogs with different breeds of dogs with men, different kinds of men. So he draws a parallel between men and dogs. And the more you read of Shakespeare, you'll realize that it is such lines that make Shakespeare's works what they are. So, for example, in As You Like It, he says, all world's a stage and all men and women merely players. And here, he talks about different variety of men, just like different types of dogs. So, individuality. the different qualities, individuality which sets them different from the rest. Now look at Banquo as a character, and look at Macbeth. They're both different, just like different dogs. So everyone has different value. They are different, and if you borrow this line from As You Like It, all world's a stage and all men and women are merely players. They are like characters. They play different roles, and here also he's talking about the difference between men. And we already know Banquo is different from Macbeth, and we have Lady Macbeth too, who's manipulative, and so completely we have completely different characters. Banquo and Macbeth both heard the prophecy of the witches, but they dealt with it in a different manner. Banquo has self-control, restraint, whereas Macbeth is someone who gets easily manipulated. And also, there are other characters like Duncan who are gullible, who easily trust people, who fall prey to traitors. So, here he talks about different types of men and their value. Then he says, who were our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. So, here he is planning to get Banquo to get rid of Banquo, and he says sickly in his life. So he's sick, he's feeling ill, he's uncomfortable because he knows that Banquo is alive and his sons are going to become the king. So my throne, it's not secure. So he says, my health is but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. So I'll feel well, I'll be better when Banquo is dead. Then go to line number 117, where Macbeth says, so is he mine in such bloody distance that every minute of his being thrusts again my nearest of life, and though I could with barefaced power sweep him from my sight and bid my will avouch it, yet I must not, for certain friends that are both his and mine, whose love I may not drop. So here Macbeth came up with this reason. Um, he says that we have certain friends in common, so maybe this is an excuse that he uses. Banquo is his friend, hence he cannot kill him by himself. Similarly, Lady Macbeth came up with the reason that Duncan resembles her father, the Freudian fixation, and here too, Macbeth does not want to. He does not want the blood to be on his hands literally, even though he is still going to be responsible for Banquo's murder. But he does not want the blood to stick on his hands quite literally, as it did in Act 1 when he killed Duncan. And it was very difficult for him to wash the blood off his hands. So here he has hired people, he has hired 2 murderers to get rid of Banquo and his son Flynns. Then he says in line number 137, Flynns, his son, that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. So the main target was always Flynns, not Banquo, because his sons, remember, his sons shall be kings. So that's the thing with crime. You commit one crime after the other, and you fall into this loop that you can't step out of it. And Macbeth is going to repent later in Act 3, Scene 4. He'll repent that he has stepped too far in this game of murder, that he cannot step back, he cannot step out of it. Then he says, after the murderers exit, that it is concluded, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it out tonight. This is in line number 145. So it somewhat echoes the line that Macbeth says before he kills Duncan. Hear it not, Duncan, for it's a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. So notice that there's no rhyme scheme employed in the play, but such words, such sentences, sharp, stark sentences, they appear in verse form. So, in order to highlight the lines. Also, I recently watched this TV series You, where the protagonist, Joe Goldberg, he commits one crime after the other. So I could draw a parallel between Macbeth and Joe, because they can't stop. Once you commit one crime, you can't really stop. You got to commit the other in order to get clean out of the previous one. So this is end of Act 3, Scene 1. Now let's start Scene 2. So enter Macbeth's lady and a wife. Macbeth's lady, as in Lady Macbeth. She enters. So she says, "Is Banquo gone from court?" Servant says, "Yes, madam, but returns again tonight." Says to the king, "I would attend his leisure for a few words." "Madam, I will." Now, this is a brief soliloquy by Lady Macbeth. It's very important. So this shows us how she's dealing with the murder of King Duncan and the newly acquired power as a king by by her husband. So she says, "Nought's had, all spent, where a desire is got without content. It's safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." So she is not content. She confesses that she is not content. Now she is beginning to see the effects of the deed, the complications of the deed. It's a shift in the play. Now a strong, bold character, Lady Macbeth, who could never be moved even at the sight of blood or murder. Now she's starting to turn weak, and she says that she's without content, and it's safer to be that which we destroy. So uh, Duncan is well off. He is safe because no one can harm him. But here, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they are not able to sleep. They are without content. Now, if you have read works of Shakespeare, you'll realize, and not just Shakespeare, mostly drama. Even if you read literary criticism about drama, so drama is meant to teach as well as delight. So Shakespeare's works, they teach us, and at the same time they delight us. So what's the lesson here? What is it that Shakespeare is teaching us? So this could be that things that we do to get what we desire, when we use foul means, so they don't always turn up well for us. So before committing a crime, we should think twice before falling for the foul way. We should think twice. It is not necessary that we will be content after committing the crime. So maybe this is the lesson that Shakespeare is giving here, because even Lady Macbeth is starting to repent it. Then, when her husband enters, she is still handling the situation for her husband. She's consoling him, and she says, "What's done is done. So please don't think about it." Because Macbeth looks dull. It's if you look at his face, it's very very much evident that he is not stable mentally after the acts that he has committed. Then Macbeth says, it's in line number 18. Before we will eat our meal in fear and sleep, in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. So remember, sleep, dream, lack of sleep, central ideas to the play. And that's exactly what the three witches have prophesied in Act 1, Scene 3, that sleep shall neither night nor day. So he is facing trouble in sleeping, and he gets terrible dreams, that is nightmares. So he's repenting, and so I shared introductory lectures in psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud, where he talks about dream theory. So dreams are comprised of our unresolved conflicts, our fears, and also day-to-day residue. So human psyche can be divided into unconscious, conscious, and conscience. So here, Macbeth, maybe he has a guilt conscience, and his unconscious, that is the dark, the deep part of a human psyche. So it is affecting him. He is unable to sleep because his unconscious mind is constantly troubling him. And not just his unconscious, even consciously he's in trouble. So his unconscious, conscience, as well as conscious, the three states of human psyche, all are troubled. So that's why he has lost sleep. He lives in constant state of fear, and he gets terrible dreams even if he manages to sleep for a while. So he's repenting in a way. He's not content with what he got. It was not worth it, he realizes. So he lost a number of things too. Sleep, peace. He lost sleep and sense of peace. Remember what witches said in Act 1, Scene 1? Battles lost in one. So remember the contradictions, paradoxical language. So here, exactly what has happened to Macbeth. So he has won the crown, but at the same time he has lost a number of things, including his friends, including his sleep and peace, mental peace. Then in line number 33 he says, we must lave. Lave means to wash. Remember the act of washing, and to not be able to wash the blood off your hands. So he says that we must lave our honors in these flattering streams and make our faces wizards to our heart, disguising what they are. So he's focusing on exactly what his wife told him, that you must look innocent and be a serpent underneath. Then Lady Macbeth says, you must leave this. She is trying to handle the situation, but she has created a monster out of Macbeth. Now there's no going back. Then Macbeth says, oh, full of scorpions is my mind. Dear wife, thou knowest that Banquo and his son, his Flynns lives. So this image is very striking. He says, oh, full of scorpions is my mind. So as if someone has cut open his head and filled it up with scorpions. So it shows that he's experiencing mental breakdown. So problem isn't that Duncan is dead, but the main problem is that he died for Banquo's son, and Banquo and his son Flynns, they're alive. So that is troubling Macbeth. Then in line number 45, Lady Macbeth says, what's to be done? Macbeth, be innocent of the knowledge. So innocent as in ignorance can sometimes be bliss. And here Macbeth is not opening up to his own wife as well, which is for the first time. This happens for the first time in play, that he is not revealing his actions, the future plan of events to his wife. Because earlier, when remember when he met the three witches, he quickly sent a letter to Lady Macbeth. He informed her, but here he is hiding it from her. He says, "Be innocent of the knowledge." And line number 49. In line number 49, he says, "And with thy bloody and invisible hand, cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale." So here he's talking about the contract of Banquo's life, because he has already signed a contract with the two murderers. That's what he's referring to here. Then in line number 54, he says, whilst knights black agents to their praise do rouse. So this theme of night and the black agents of night, it will continue in the next scene as well. This is end of Act 3, Scene 2. Now we'll start with Act 3, Scene 3.